Hey, this is Matt, and in this tutorial we're going to get into Reaper, and I'm going to show you the things you're going to have to do for assignment 5. So, we'll get into Reaper. This is the 64-bit version. Here is the pop-up that tells you how much time you have remaining. You have a 60-day window to use the program, free of charge, and it's the full version. You have to wait about 3 seconds, and then this button will pop up down here in the lower right corner, still evaluating, and then you just select that to get into the program. So here we are. It looks a little bit like any other audio program. It has an arrange window here. It has a bunch of options, drop downs at the top. We don't really need to get lost in these quite yet. These buttons over on the left hand side, if you hover over them, it'll tell you exactly what they do. The top row are basically project-based options, and then the second row are basic editing global settings for within the project. There's transport, which is just your play, stop, rewind, and record buttons. And then the bottom here is a mixer, which you can hide it with this X button. You can hit Command M, and that'll hide it, give you a little bit more real estate, or you can show it here. But it's really nice to have your master output here. This is something that GarageBand doesn't show you right up front, or Audacity, and you can insert effects in here, which we'll get to eventually. But before you do any editing, what you need to do is create a folder and save the file. So what you're going to do is go to File, Save Project As, and then on the desktop, I'm just going to create something called my last name. Assignment 5. Just leave these options selected now, and what that's going to do is copy audio into this folder. And this Reaper is really cool. It's pretty organized in that it puts everything in the folder so you can move it around and take it with you. And you can actually see it pretty easily. So once you get this selected, hit save, and then here is our folder on the desktop. If you click on it, you'll see an RPP. That is a Reaper document. And then probably want to record first. So one thing you need to do is make sure that you have your audio card set up. So the one thing I'm going to do under preferences is go to audio and then devices. And in this case, I'm using this little breakout box that my mic is plugged into. But you can just use the default system settings too if you're going to be just dropping sound effects and Foley into it. So you just select that and hit OK. But I'm just going to stay here. Otherwise, let's stay out of playing with all this other stuff. We'll get into some more of this in future lessons. So the other thing to do is go to Project Settings, this one here, and then you can change your sample rate. And for now, that is probably the only thing that we really need to have set up. And then we're going to be off to the races. So I'm going to create a track, and that is here under Track. Eventually get into your key commands. It'll save a lot of time. Arm the track here with this red button. You can see your voice moving or whatever it is that you're recording in here. And then I'm just going to hit record. Microphone check, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm going to save it. Now if I go back over here, you'll see that it has saved this WAV file into the document. And then the repeaks here, this is a small document that is basically the waveform. And then sometimes in the default settings, it might save the repeaks onto the desktop. If it does that and you trash it, it's no big deal. It'll recreate them every time you get into a new document. And you'll see this offline message. This is just because I'm actually in the Finder up here. Once I click back in Reaper, you can see the waveform. Now, notice that it started recording where I had my cursor set up. So if I want to move this around, I can just grab it and move it. But it's moving, it's jerky, right? So it's snapping to this grid. For this project, we're going to deselect snap here. And now I can move it anywhere I want to seamlessly. I'm going to leave the grid engaged here. This is the grid. If I take that off, just because sometimes it's easier to have it there, you can see it as a point of reference when you're lining things up. So what you're going to do is create an audio story using effects and Foley only. You can record things in. You can find them on freesound.org. I just got a few from freesound.org. So they're on my desktop. I can just drag them into the field here. There's one. There's another. And here is another. So notice that it created these peaks files. You can trash those later. It'll just redraw them when you reopen the document. So what I have here are, I've got some footsteps down here. I have a scream and I have some bee sounds. So I was going to do something where, I don't know, a guy goes down a hall and encounters a swarm of bees and then he yells. just really short and sweet. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. And if I look at my steps, they're pretty sparse. So I really want to use this little piece of the footsteps. I can do a couple things. One is I can just scroll this back here from the margin, or I can actually cut it out. So let me just show you how to do some basic audio editing here. If you move your cursor to the beginning of your audio file and then hit S, it'll make a cut, and then you can move your cursor to the other side, hit S again, and I can just delete the unwanted stuff. So I'm just going to put this here in the beginning. And your zoom functions, I have it set up my mouse pad or my trackpad on my laptop. Pinching will zoom in and out, but plus and minus here will zoom in and out as well in a pinch. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back to the beginning and then rearrange my audio here. So I've got my footsteps. You're going to hear some bees, and then there's a little scream. Rewind here to the beginning, and then we'll hit play. Okay, there's my little short story. Yours has to be a little longer, but this is basically what I want to see. 3 tracks. Then the other things you have to do are you're going to have to put some effects on them and do some pan and volume automation. So the things that jumped out at me here were the bees. The volume jumps up too quickly. So I'm going to use automation to control this. Notice in between these tracks, if I hover, it will have this expand function. I'm just going to pull this down and notice that a few extra little gizmos popped up. And one of those is this trim function. And trim will let us draw automation in. So what I'm going to do is select volume and pan. And then I can go in and I can paint. So what can I paint? I can paint curves. So what I'm going to do is have my bees. I kind of want to have this ramp up a little bit. So if I hit Command on a Mac, it's slightly different key command on a PC, but it's one of those buttons to the left of the spacebar. You paint your automation points in, and then you can move them around. So the first time you do this, you might have them both selected, and if they're selected, they're both dark. And if you try to move them, notice it's moving around as a big block here, and that can be kind of annoying. So what I'm going to do is click on the gray field behind it, and then once they turn white, then you can move them around individually. And then this way we can ramp our B sound up, maybe slowly like this. And let's give this a listen. And maybe a little more natural. Let's make it so it sounds like they come swarming up. A little bit longer. Okay, that's cool. And then let's say maybe they're coming from one side of the screen to the other. So I'm going to put in a couple automation points for pan as well. Oops. And then same thing, you got to click off it. And then do this little pan move here, and let's preview it. So it moves from one ear to the other. So all sorts of fun with that. Sometimes having all these windows open at the same time can be kind of annoying. So you can go to Track and go to Envelopes. And then here you can see where you can toggle volume and pan off. And they have key commands set to hide these. So V and P will hide them. So watch this. If I hit V and P, it'll hide my automation curves, which can be annoying when I'm moving things around. Speaking of moving things around, watch what happens if I have this envelope points move along with media items engaged. When I move my piece of audio, my automation points move along with it, which is really powerful. So make sure you leave that engaged here. And then what you're going to have to do is do some automation for those other tracks. So I'm just going to hide those for now because there are a couple other things that I'm going to have to do. And that is put some effects on here. So effects, you will see over here, it says effects. The cool thing about dealing with effects in Reaper is you can audition them in real time. So what I want to do is put some reverb on these footsteps, make it sound like he's in a hall. So what I'm going to do is just swipe up here above, just like Audacity, above the arrange window, and create a little loop. To play back the loop, you have to hit the cycle button here. And then when you hit play, watch what happens. It's just going to create a loop. And then I'm going to put a reverb on here, and you can do this in real time. You click on effects, and then you make sure you're on Kakos. These are the ones that come along with it. If you have VST plugins engaged, you can pick some of those, or audio units if you're on a Mac. So let's see, we're going to go to reverb here. Down at the bottom, here, reverb, hit OK. And then I'm going to use a preset here. And it has a wet and dry mix. And you can adjust some of these other parameters here, but I just want a little bit. So you have to have some sort of effect on each track and volume and pan automation. You might want to just put a compressor on it, or maybe an EQ. Turn the ratio up here, drop back my threshold. So that one, I've got a little compression on that track. And then you can turn the effects on and off after you engage them, like this. So green is engaged, red is not, and we're almost ready to be done here. There's just one more little step, and that is going to be put an effect on the master block. So, also notice that we have other tracks down here in my mixer, which is pretty cool. So you can actually see the levels down here, and let's see what happens. I'm going to go back to the beginning and hit play, and just watch the levels on the tracks here. So notice that I had some automation on here and the volume, and it didn't change this volume here for that track. So this is kind of cool because I can do that automation, and then this is sort of like a global override that can control the setting on top of it. So now I'm going to drop this back and let's play it again. So there's sort of two levels of control. So after you have all your little automation moves in, you can still make some moves in the mixer. So if a track clips, it'll turn up red here. Just click on the red part to make it go away, but you're also going to have to drop back those levels. So you don't want to have any clipping. The big thing that you can do on the master block to avoid clipping on the output is put the W1 limiter, and you just go to effects right here on the master block. And this is a VST plugin. And if you scroll down, you should have this already installed in your VST plugins folder. And then you just put your threshold about 3 dB back here. And this will smooth out any peaks and keep them from going or trying to go over 0 and clipping the output. And there you go. You're pretty much ready to export your masterpiece here. The final step is to go to File, and it's called Render in this case. So we're going to go here to Render, and here you can see your sample rate and output format. We have a WAV file. You can select different ones, sort of like Audacity, which is really cool. You can change from 24 to 16-bit, etc., which is pretty cool. Make sure that you double check the file setting requirements that I want for this one in the assignment. And then to render it, you just hit render and make sure you have it named correctly. And the default, this is kind of nice, is it automatically puts it in the folder. So this is something that will keep your work organized automatically. So you're just going to have to zip that folder before you send it to me. So we're going to render it. Okay, and let's go double check our work, because we should always double check the export. And here we go. It's right here, McLean assignment 5. Let's just preview it. And it works. And we're almost done here. This is the last step. So we have our export and we have our Reaper document here. But notice that the audio files that I dropped into the arrange window aren't within the project folder. And this is a potential pitfall with Reaper, but before you close your document, you need to wrap it up with a bow by doing a save as. So I'm going to go back over here to Reaper and then go to save project as. And remember, it will have these options to copy all media into the project. So you want to check the box to copy all media, but not the create subdirectory box. If the subdirectory box is checked every time you do a save as, it will create a new subdirectory within the old one, and you'll wind up with files and folders within folders within folders, and it'll be really hard to keep track of where everything is. So the last step is to compress it. There you go. You have a nice little zip folder with the Reaper document and all of your audio wrapped up. But that last step is really critical. Otherwise, if you move it somewhere and just leave this stuff hanging out on the desktop, you're going to run into a problem and you're going to get a bunch of blank audio in here. Okay, cheers.